Now let's get some insights from maritime security expert Ray Powell. Ray, good morning. Thank you for joining us here on News and Views.
Thanks, Diego. Thanks, Angela. How are you?
Hey, fine, fine. Ray, I'd like to start off talking about the May 21 incident, which you have called something as an escalation. Although we're used to water cannon attacks, but you have said this exposes, well, you see, exact words was the failure of ambiguity as a deterrence. And the first one was you're saying that we have to take a look at the messaging of the U.S. from their side. What do you mean by that?
So we have in the United States for decades had a kind of a policy of ambiguity when it came to all of the Spratly Archipelago. And so we just didn't want to take a position on anyone's sovereignty. And I think that was an appropriate approach back when there was some hope of maintaining the status quo.
Yeah.
But China has thoroughly upended the status quo and has become much more aggressive. And so I think it's time for the United States to take something of a stand for its Philippine ally.
So what kind of a stand are you looking at? What kind of messaging should the U.S. then give towards China for them to at least de-escalate their aggressive stance?
Well, specifically with regard to Pagasa Island, what I recommended was that the U.S. Recognize the Philippines' administrative control over Pagasa. So that's the same way that we look at, for example, the Senkaku Islands, which are uninhabited off Japan. We say, okay, Japan has administrative control, even though China contests the sovereignty. And that seems like a reasonable step to take for the United States to say, look, this has got a civilian population. Yeah. It's the only Spratly Island that has one. It's been in the Philippine hands for 5 decades. I think it's safe to say the Philippines has administrative control. That doesn't seem like a big stretch to me.
Yeah. I want to talk about the code of conduct, which is being discussed right now at the ASEAN. What do you think about some critics would say that a code of conduct won't solve the South China Sea issues based on 2 concerns? First issue would be the state of the talk themselves, where trust between parties is plainly lacking. Second concern would be the quality of the outcome of the code of conduct, in which they think whether China will be willing to sign a legally binding agreement.
Yeah, I'm one of those critics. So I don't think that China would sign a legally binding agreement unless China was the legal binder. They want to be the ones who actually are the arbiter of truth or of sovereignty. So, I don't see China signing up to anything that the other claimant states could stand. So I've never thought that we've been playing this game for, decades now.
That's right,
I think it's time to sort of admit that it's not going to happen. And frankly, China has not abided by the 2002 Declaration of the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea. It has denied freedom of navigation. It unnecessarily escalated conflict. It has not gone to peaceful arbitration. So I think that China you can't build a code of conduct on bad faith, and China has clearly exercised bad faith.
I think, Ray, we in the Philippines here are looking for really answers to find ways of really de-escalating China's aggressive behavior. And it's been suggested by, I think, you and several others also that we should have a joint civic mission with the U.S. to at least show China that, hey, our big brother is with us in this issue while stopping short of declaring war.
Yeah, so the United States has programs that involve medical and engineering civic action programs where we go out and we could, do dental work and build school, or repair buildings and all those kinds of things out at Pagasa. I think it's more than past time that the U.S. show the flag alongside our Philippine ally on Pagasa and demonstrate that we are one team, one fight, as it were. If China wants to complain about the fact that we bring out doctors and engineers, then they can do that. But they complain about everything, so why should we care?
Why do you think there's some kind of apprehension on both sides from doing this joint mission?
Yeah, so I think one of the problems that we have is we on the American side are still stuck a little bit in the past, where we're trying to maintain a status quo that doesn't exist anymore. We're worried about what Taiwan and Vietnam will think, because they also claim Pagasa and a lot of the other Spratly Islands. But they'll complain and they'll get over it. Right now, I think that the existential threat is clearly Chinese expansionism, and so I think this is a reasonable step. Administrative control, recognizing administrative control is a reasonable step. Sending out a medical civic action program is a reasonable step, just to show that the United States is committed to its ally.
But do you believe that, but taking back my question to the ongoing ASEAN summit, do you believe that ASEAN has done enough in de-escalating the situation in the South China Sea?
No, but I don't think it can. I mean, I'm with the former Singaporean diplomat Bilahari Kausikan, who famously said that ASEAN is not a horse, it's a cow. And so if you're trying to make it run in a horse race, you're going to be disappointed. And so if you try to make ASEAN solve these intractable security problems, it's just going to be disappointing. ASEAN's not built for it. So a cow is a useful animal. They can do lots of things with a cow. Just don't ask it to be a horse.
Good point.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd like to, there's some apprehension you mentioned about the U.S. side, but if, hypothetically, if this were a mission to be together with, let's put in France, let's put in Germany, let's put in Australia and the U.S., a joint civic mission among partners, like 5 nations, do you think now this lessens the tension between the U.S., Philippines, and China, geopolitical interplay?
Well, first, I'm not sure we'd get those other players. I mean, it would be hard. Right now, it seems hard enough to get the U.S. To sign up to it, or even the U.S. and the Philippines. But even if we did, no, it wouldn't lessen the tension. But the tension is not going to be less unless the Philippines backs off. And I don't think the Philippines wants to back off, because backing off generally means yielding to China more of what China wants and less of what the Philippines wants. So, unfortunately, the compromises that China has in mind all involve the Philippines compromising and and China remaining the same.
Mm-hmm. Well, finally, what are your thoughts on the ongoing Atin Ito Coalition civilian mission? They've already been in their 3rd mission. What do you think about it?
It's a concert. Yeah, it's a concert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's great. I've told many people, and in fact, I've written this. My father was involved in the civil rights protests in the United States, which used a tactic called nonviolent direct action. And it's the same kind of thing used by Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi. Basically, it's a long-term strategy of demonstrating the rightness of your cause, peaceful demonstrations, those kinds of things. And what it's meant to do is it's meant to, over a long period of time, help an oppressed group overcome an oppressor by just essentially wearing them down. And so this, I think, is it's a great thing. In fact, I talked to Rafaela David just a little while ago, and I told her that I think that they're doing a wonderful thing, and I'm a big admirer.
Right. And maybe this would be a common thing, not only with the Philippines, but involving other nations, like a joint ASEAN concert within the area. Do you think that would work?
I think if you're waiting for the ASEANs to show up, I think you might be waiting a very long time.
I'd like to ask Ray, what leverage, we're just out of answers, what leverage can the Philippines use to at least get an even conversation with China on the table? Let's face it, at this point, I don't see any leverage, but what can we leverage?
Well, I mean, so you've managed to get a deal done around Ayungin and Shoal, right? And the deal seems to have been that China will be able to claim that the Philippines is abiding by all of its terms, and the Philippines is able to deny that it's doing any of those things, and both nations are going to let that happen. So I think this is kind of the way things are going to go. I don't think you're going to be able to lessen the tension without giving up your sovereignty. And so I think, as I said, I think this is a long-term struggle. When you're dealing with an imperialist force, an occupation force, when I've said before that I believe that the West Philippine Sea is essentially a maritime occupation by an imperialist force, you have to outlast it. That's the way you defeat an imperialist. And so, over time, the imperialist wonders why. Heck, the United States was an imperialist in the Philippines once, and the Philippines outlasted us. Eventually, the United States said, "Why are we here? Why are we trying to claim this place all the way across the water that we don't need to have, and we don't want to be that kind of country anyway?" And so, what you're hoping is not that they're going to decide next year or in 5 years, but maybe in 10 or 15 or 20 years, they'll begin to say, this is not in China's national interest to keep oppressing its neighbors in the way we are. We have bigger problems.
So it's like you're saying, as of this point, we just have to be consistent in the way we conduct our missions and not back down.
Consistent, patient, and you know what? You've been doing great. Really, the Philippines has been doing very, very well. The Transparency Initiative has been effective in uniting the Philippine people, in helping the Philippines to commit to capacity building. It's helped unite a lot of other countries. The number of countries who now affirm the arbitral ruling has multiplied. And so I think that the Philippines is actually on quite a good trajectory. It just can look, when you look out at it and you see all these Chinese ships, it can seem very frustrating. But, I think actually the Philippines is doing quite well.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, maritime security expert Ray Powell. Thanks for joining us.
Great to see you. Thanks.